Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Logan Albright and I'm back with another book review for you. Today I want to do not a well-known book, but it's one I recently read and I enjoyed quite a lot. It is by Dion Fortune and it's called The Goatfoot God. Dion Fortune was an early 20th century psychologist and occultist and writer. She hung out with all those early 20th century British magicians and wizards and witches and all the people who were starting Wicca and all the people who were involved in ceremonial magic. She hung around with all those people, was a member of a number of secret societies, and wrote a lot of very, very good books on occultism, which I've read many, and they're all excellent. If you're interested in the subject, I recommend. But she also wrote novels, and she was a psychologist, and this is the first one of her fiction works that I've read. It was recommended to me, and I thought I'd give it a shot. She has several novels to choose from. But I chose this one because there's sort of a pairing of two. The Goatfoot God is sort of dedicated to the masculine aspect of the god, and then she has another book called The Sea Priestess, which is sort of dedicated to the feminine aspect of God. So I wanted to read this one first, and I have The Sea Priestess, and I'll read that one next. The plot of this book concerns a man whose wife is killed in a car accident, and at the same time he learns that she has been killed. He learns that she was having an affair with another man, a friend of his, who actually introduced them and set them up together so that he could kind of covertly, without his knowledge, finance their affair that they were having, because he's a very rich man, and he's forced to confront this fact that his wife never loved him and just married him for his money so that she could have an affair with this friend of his. Naturally, this is sort of earth-shaking for him, and he wanders out and finds his way into an antiquarian bookstore where the bookseller becomes his friend, and they start talking about life and things, and he decides he wants to get involved in the invocation of the god Pan from Greek mythology. He reads a bunch of stuff about the Black Mass and a bunch of stuff about occultism, and he says, the way I can exorcise these demons is to invoke Pan, and that's what the title of the book refers to, the Goatfoot God. The bookseller thinks it's a bad idea, but he doesn't want to leave the guy alone because he wants to help him, and so he kind of goes along with it for a while, and that's the kind of the jumping off point of the plot. And essentially what happens is that without spoilers or anything, the book is basically about a personal transformation that takes place. It's about a man going through a trauma and coming out the other side of it and wrestling with his demons and his neuroses and figuring out how to live a better life and how to be a better person and how to get over his past hang-ups. Overall, I think it's a really good book. I liked it a lot. It's not like an earth-shaking great novel or anything. It's not going to be one for the ages, but I found it thoroughly entertaining. It's got a lot of the trappings of the Gothic novel, which I really like. It's got a lot of things that appeal to my sensibilities. There's the antiquarian bookseller. He ends up buying this kind of musty old dilapidated monastery that's been falling apart in the English countryside. There's talk about ley lines. There's all these kind of pagan references, and inside the monastery there's all these altars and things that have been set up, and there's this history of the monks that live there and what happened with them. So a lot of kind of Gothic decoration around the novel. It's not really about those things. It's more about what's going on inside his head. But there's a lot of the trimmings of Gothic novels and of supernatural novels. And I find that really appealing, and I like that. I also like the early 20th century British style of writing. I find that very appealing. I'm sort of an Anglophile, as I've talked about before. I like my British authors, so I like that a lot too. It's a bit dated at times, obviously. It's early 20th century. Attitudes about gender and race are different than they are now, so I have to put that caveat in. If that kind of stuff bothers you, you may not enjoy it too much. I personally didn't mind it. I thought it was, I understand it's a product at its time. And Dion Fortune was actually kind of a proto-feminist and pretty forward-thinking in her ideas about the way women's roles in society. Although it may not seem like it from reading the book at first glance, I think if you have a deeper understanding of the women characters in the book, you'll see that she actually had very advanced ideas about the roles of women in society. Her training as a psychologist really comes through in this. There's a lot of stuff about what goes on inside the mind. There's a lot of, not really Freudian, I would say, but definitely psychoanalytical language, because I think a lot of what Freud thought was pretty wrong, and I disagree with him on a lot of things, and I don't disagree with her. But it is definitely the language of psychoanalysis shows up in here. The language of occultism shows up in here, which I certainly appreciate, and I think there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from the types of advice that is given in the book and the types of descriptions of what goes on in people's heads and how they deal with trauma, how they process these things. I found there was a lot of wisdom in that, and I had been told by other writers that her fiction books contain just as much occult wisdom, if not more so, than her nonfiction books. And I think there's some truth to that. I really did find a lot to appreciate in this book. It gets a little slow in the middle, but it certainly picks up again at the end, and there's a satisfying conclusion. The edition I have is published by Wiser Publications, and they do a lot of books you might see on the shelf behind me. They do a lot of books about magic and paganism and the supernatural and the occultism, so they're always an interesting publisher to seek out. Whenever I see books published by them, they have my attention. They have this nice little Ankh symbol on the side that you can easily recognize them, and I find their books to be generally of high quality and worth reading. And they don't do a ton of fiction, but obviously because of her reputation and the circles she ran in, they do her fiction. So yeah, there you go. The Goatfoot God by Dion Fortune. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to read more of her books. I have The Sea Priestess on the bookshelf behind me, and I'll be reading that pretty soon. But if you're into that kind of thing, if you like the supernatural and paganism and occultism and psychiatry and psychology, and you like Gothic novels and you like British things, this might just be right up your alley. I don't expect that it's going to be, a real classic that's remembered through the ages, because it does have its flaws, but it's a lot of fun. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, something you may not have heard of, it may take you down a new path that you haven't been down before. I'm always looking for those type of things. I'm always looking for new paths to go down in literature. So that's my review. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will make more of them for you. Until then, I'll see you next time. I've been Logan Albright. Peace out.